Hello. Previously, I dug up some of the raspberries from the unruly patch on the main plot and moved them to the border. I decided to move some of the rest to a bed on the new plot. Now that I've prepared a bed for them, it's time to dig up some more and move them to the new plot.
I'm trying to dig up these raspberries and they've put a lot of weed fabric, but it's this cheap nasty stuff. And you can see it's quite well matted with weeds and stuff and grass and all sorts. And then when I lift that, underneath that they put plastic, but it's thin plastic that you'd use for refuse sacks, but it hasn't stopped anything coming through. People never learn. At least it's not carpet. That's one good thing I can see. At least it's not carpet. I've dug up these raspberries to be moved into this bed, so I've marked the edges of the rows on this side. That bath is where one row will go. This is the second, this is the third, and that's the fourth. So I'll measure the other side and then can do some digging and planting.
I'm measuring and marking the rows at the other end. And now to dig a trench to put the raspberries in. It's easier to dig one long trench than a series of holes.
I've dug a trench deep enough for the raspberries, even though I've already dug this bed over. I'm still finding bits of bindweed root. I think if I dug halfway to China I'd still find bindweed root. So I just have to deal with it as I find it. I don't think I'll ever truly get rid of it.
Now that the trench is dug, I can add some slow release fertilizer.
I'm going to add two things when I plant the raspberries and strawberries. First is the fish blood and bone, which is a slow release fertilizer, and I'll work that into the soil before I put the plants in. And then the mycorrhizal fungi, I will put a little bit on the roots just before planting them.
As there was some freshly dug soil, I used the opportunity to fill some buckets with soil for growing watercress.
These 4 buckets are going to have watercress in them. So I've used the old flower buckets that they use in supermarkets and then throw away. Now they're a bit flimsy. So the ones that were good and watertight, I've tested them, I've put water in them and they've not leaked. And then some had cracks and things in them, you can see. So they're no good for anything, but I put the good one inside the bad one, so it just gives it a bit more strength. So I've used up even the ones that were not good, just to reinforce the good buckets. So what I'm going to do is put some soil in, and then I'm going to add some lime, because watercress likes chalky soil. Well, I haven't got chalk, but I've got lime, so that'll have the same effect of dropping the acidity down towards neutral. It's raining, so I've got to be quick. I've got this bag of lime and I've half filled these pots with soil, so just add a little bit, not too much, to each pot. Then mix it in. Topped it off with a bit more soil, a bit more lime, mix that in, and then I'll add the compost later to top it off. That's the 4 buckets for the watercress ready. I'll add compost to it later and then plant into it, but I thought, seeing as I had this bed dug over for the raspberries and weeded, I'll get some of the soil and put it in here, as I know it's good weed-free soil. Now watercress needs access to a lot of minerals, so just normal potting compost or multi-purpose compost really isn't good enough. It needs good rich soil, and I've limed it to sort of drop the acidity towards neutral. So it looks like there's a lot of lime, but watercress grows on chalky soils, so he likes the sort of slightly chalky alkaline soils, so that's why I put a lot of lime in. Watercress doesn't like direct sunlight,
as the high humidity and direct sunlight would lead to a buildup of algae and duckweed.
That's south, and they're going to sit under this bench, so they're not going to get any direct sunlight on them, but they'll be here where it's nice and warm, so we should get an early crop, and they should last well into October, November, hopefully, in this spot, because it'll still be warm enough for them. So it'll be warm, but not in direct sunlight. If it's too hot for them in the middle of summer, well, they're in small buckets, I can move them somewhere else, under the shade of a tree or something. First, a good sprinkling of fish blood and bone as a good general slow release fertiliser. So I put a generous amount in the trench and then just work it into the ground a little bit. Now I need to put the raspberries in every 45-50 centimetres, and I've got a stick that is just the right length, so I'm going to use that for measuring. These strawberries I grew from seed last year, but I didn't have anywhere to put them, so they sat in the pots over winter, and they're okay. They look a little bit bedraggled, some of them, the leaves, but that's okay. Once they get into the ground, they'll take off. Now these are, I think they were either alpine ones or wild strawberries that don't actually send out runners, or they're not supposed to, which is why you have to grow them from seed. But these will be perfect to go in between the raspberries, so that I can put one between each pair of raspberries, and then they won't spread and run amok like raspberries normally do. And then once they run out of oomph after about 3-4 years, I'll just replace them. It's just quickly stopped raining, so before it starts again. I've alternated the strawberries and the raspberries. Obviously they're going to go and sit here, but I'll just put them up there, just in between the raspberries. So it's 6 raspberries and 7 strawberries in each row. And that just leaves a bit of room at the ends of the beds to put some posts in, and then I can put some wire in and tie the strawberries to the wire as they grow. It's time to put some of this root grow on the raspberries. Okay, so reading the instructions, I'm going to put 1 scoop or half a scoop per plant. Actually, having read the instructions, you don't need quite as much as that, so just sprinkle. Of course, when I'm trying to sprinkle something, the wind picks up, but just a sprinkle on each one is all it needs. And so that's done. Just sort of give it a generous sprinkle. Don't have to be too precise. It was working on the size of pots, so just gone by a rough idea. Oh, yeah.
I'm raising the level a little bit under the strawberries so that the crown is not buried. The raspberries is obviously the right depth. It's not that crucial. It's more the strawberries that we want to keep the crown above ground level. Raspberries don't mind. They're a centimetre or 2 below where they were planted before. That's the first strawberry and raspberry planted, and I'll do the same with the others. The first row is in, and I'll do the other rows later.
I've put in 3 rows of raspberries and strawberries, and I've watered them in. Now I'll do the rest of the bed and then I'll mulch it, but I've got to weed it first, and then putting another row of raspberries and then some currant bushes, black currants and red currants, and then this bath I'll clear for the blueberries, and that barrel will be another blueberry, but these I'm going to put in next year, so there's no rush on this or that one, so I'll just clear them when I have the time. But I'll clear the rest of the bed, move those bits of slabs.
I still had plenty of raspberries left after giving some away to people that I know. Now I've been taking some to the car park for other plot holders to plant on their allotments.
But these broad beans in toilet rolls need to go into the ground as soon as possible, and they're getting quite big. There's a few stragglers and a few no-shows, but mostly they're okay and they're ready to go. So I'll try and get them into the ground today. I might put some of these peas and that perpetual spinach in as well. Right, this bed, let's add the garlic in, and this is where we had the broad beans, and this side of it, and we have 1, 2, so we've got one there and one there, 3, 4 and 5, and I mean they look pretty ratty. Out of 5 out of 60 the mice left me, so I'm going to see what happens with those. I'll mark those, and then once I've weeded I'll put the other broad beans in here. Now I put some celeriac last year, but it was in late, but it's come through the winter, so this celeriac's come through the winter alright. I'll weed around it and leave it and see what happens